picture this. You're in New York City.
Okay.
Right outside the Hilton Midtown.
Oh, yeah.
Fancy hotel.
Yeah.
People rushing around.
Yeah.
Taxis honking.
Yeah.
It's just the usual crazy city stuff.
Right.
But then, bang, a gunshot.
Oh, wow.
And Brian Thompson,
Okay.
who's a big shot CEO of this huge health insurance company, UnitedHealthcare, you've probably heard of them.
Right.
He's shot and killed right there on the street.
Oh, gosh.
The killer runs off, blends right into the crowd.
Jeez.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The guy who did it, Luigi Mangione, he's not your typical criminal.
What do you mean?
This guy's a genius.
Really?
Went to a top university, had a super bright future ahead of him.
Huh.
So how does someone like that become a killer?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's what we're going to try to figure out today.
It's a story that has a lot of people confused.
Yeah?
It brings up some touchy subjects, too.
Yeah.
Healthcare technology, how we react to the news.
Yeah, for sure.
It might even make you think differently about right and wrong.
Okay, so before we get into the actual crime,
Right.
let's talk about Luigi himself.
Okay.
All our sources describe him as this guy who had everything. Brains, a good family. He was even doing well in the tech world.
Yeah.
Came from money too. Country clubs, healthcare businesses, the whole deal.
Interesting.
Doesn't exactly sound like the background of a killer, does it?
Not really, no. You wouldn't think so.
So where did things go off the rails?
Right.
What happened that made him turn against everything he seemed set up to succeed in?
Well, with most things that are complicated, there's no single answer.
Right.
But his health seems to have played a big part.
Okay.
Luigi started having really bad back pain.
Oh, wow.
He even had to have surgery. But the pain didn't go away.
Oh, yeah.
And he felt like the whole healthcare system had let him down.
So you're saying his own problems with healthcare are what made him so angry at the whole system?
It seems like that was the starting point.
Yeah.
He started to see his pain not just as his own problem, but as part of a bigger problem with the system.
Okay.
Like it was more concerned with making money than actually helping people.
And is that when things started to get darker?
It seems that way.
Okay.
He got into the writings of Ted Kaczynski.
The Unabomber.
Yeah, you know him.
Oh, yeah. For our younger listeners.
Right.
The Unabomber was this guy who lived alone in the woods. And he would mail bombs to people he thought were hurting society with technology.
Yeah, his philosophy was pretty complex.
Right.
But basically, he was against modern technology and all the systems he thought were making us less human.
I see.
And for Luigi, who was already feeling disillusioned and let down,
Right.
those ideas really hit home.
It's important to remember, though,
Yeah.
reading something doesn't mean you agree with it.
Oh, for sure.
Lots of people read Kaczynski's stuff and completely reject his ideas.
Absolutely.
But for Luigi, it seems like it gave him a way to understand his anger, like a reason for all that rage he was feeling. So basically this disillusionment with healthcare,
Yeah.
plus these extreme anti-establishment ideas he was reading,
Right.
all of that created a very dangerous mix in Luigi's head.
That's like a recipe for disaster.
And who became the target of all this anger?
UnitedHealthcare.
Really?
In Luigi's mind, they represented everything he hated about healthcare.
Okay.
Greed, putting profits before people not caring about individual suffering.
Wow.
He saw them as the embodiment of everything that had failed him.
And he fixated on them.
Yeah, she really did.
And this wasn't just some private grudge he had.
Oh, no.
Right. He took his anger online,
He did.
joining forums and echoing those conspiracy theories, blaming healthcare executives for all the world's problems.
Which is a classic example
Of what?
of how the internet can be good and bad at the same time.
Right.
It's a great way to connect with people and learn new things.
Yeah.
But it can also be a breeding ground for bad information and extreme views. Luigi found those online communities that just made his anger stronger, pushed him further down this dark path.
And I guess those people online probably just fueled his rage.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like he was trying to find other people who were as angry and helpless as he was.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he found people who actually encouraged those dangerous thoughts.
And that's where things took a really scary turn.
What happened?
All this anger, all this rage wasn't just talk anymore.
Oh, no.
Luigi started planning something truly awful.
Like what?
The assassination of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Wow.
He saw Thompson as the face of everything he hated,
Right.
the symbol of the system that had failed him.
And he decided to make him pay.
That's right.
Okay, so before we get into the details of that terrible day,
Right.
let's take a moment and think about what we know about Luigi so far.
Okay.
Brilliant guy, Good family, seemingly.
Uh-huh.
And yet here he is, plotting to kill someone.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It really makes you wonder how someone can go from A to B like that.
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people are asking.
Right.
And there's no simple answer.
I imagine.
It's probably a mix of things.
Like what?
Personal struggles, exposure to these radical ideas.
Okay.
And that echo chamber effect of those online communities.
Yeah.
It shows that even smart, well-adjusted people can be vulnerable to these dangerous influences.
Okay, so let's fast forward to December.
Okay.
Luigi's in Manhattan, ready to put his plan into action.
Uh-huh.
And he's not messing around.
No, he wasn't.
He's got a fake ID,
Really?
calls himself Mark Rosario,
Wow.
checked into a hostel,
Okay.
and get this, he's got a 3D printer,
What?
which he used to make a gun.
Seriously, a gun?
Yeah.
That's insane.
And this is where the technology part of this case gets really interesting and scary.
Yeah, 3D printers are amazing,
Right.
but also kind of terrifying when you think about it.
They can make almost anything out of plastic, layer by layer.
That's-
Well, Luigi used this technology to make a real gun.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty frightening when you think about it.
Yeah.
He could get around background checks and get a weapon without anyone knowing.
Right.
It's a whole new problem for law enforcement.
I bet.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know.
But this is real life.
It's scary stuff.
So he's got his fake ID, his 3D printed gun,
Mm-hmm.
and he knows Brian Thompson's schedule.
Right.
What happens next?
He waits outside the New York Hilton Midtown,
Okay.
knowing Thompson's going to be there.
Right.
And when Thompson steps out onto the street,
Which is exactly what I described at the beginning.
right, busy street,
People going about their day.
just another day in the city.
No one expecting anything bad to happen.
Nope.
Luigi makes his move.
In broad daylight.
Right in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah.
No one expects a CEO to be assassinated in such a public place.
It's shocking.
Witnesses said it was total chaos.
I can imagine.
Terrifying. 1 minute, everything's normal. The next, there's a gunshot, people screaming.
Oh my God.
Thompson's dead on the sidewalk.
Awful.
And Luigi, the guy who just killed a man in cold blood,
Yeah.
he just disappears into the crowd.
Just like that.
Gone. He uses his knowledge of the city, his tech skills,
Right.
and the chaos to get away,
Smart.
avoids security cameras, ditches his phone, basically disappears for 6 days.
6 days.
6 days. He managed to stay hidden in one of the most surveilled cities in the world.
That's incredible.
It shows how carefully he planned everything,
Yeah.
how determined he was to get away with this.
Wow. But like, we'll see. Even the best plans can fall apart.
Okay, so we've got a killer on the loose,
Right.
a manhunt underway,
Uh-huh.
the whole country is on edge.
Yeah, I bet.
What happens next? Well, that's a story for part 2 of our look into the Luigi Mangione case.
Stay tuned.
Stay with us.
We'll be right back.
So we left off with Luigi on the run after killing Brian Thompson. He managed to disappear, and the police are trying to find him. It was a crazy time, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next.
Yeah, I can only imagine the pressure on the NYPD.
Right.
They had this huge murder case. A killer who's clearly smart and knows what he's doing, and the media's all over them wanting answers.
It's like a real-life game of cat and mouse,
Exactly.
but with super high stakes.
And remember, this was right before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
People are traveling, families are getting together,
Right.
but everyone's thinking about this killer on the loose.
It must have been a scary time.
It really put a damper on the holidays.
So how did they finally catch him?
Well, this is where things get a little weird, almost funny.
Okay.
After 6 days of hiding, using all his skills and smarts,
Right.
Luigi makes a big mistake.
What do you mean?
He gets hungry.
Hungry? What are you talking about?
He walks out to a McDonald's.
McDonald's.
Yep, in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Seriously, after all that planning, all that effort to stay hidden, he risks it all for a burger.
That's right.
So did they have his picture everywhere? Was there some kind of national alert?
Of course his face was all over the news, wanted posters everywhere, you name it.
So someone recognized him.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It wasn't the FBI or the CIA or some fancy facial recognition software that got him.
It wasn't.
It was a McDonald's employee.
Are you serious? A McDonald's worker recognized him?
Yep, it's crazy, right?
That's wild.
Apparently, she had seen his picture on the news
Okay.
and just happened to be working the drive-thru when Luigi drove up in a stolen car.
It started out almost a little bit like a joke because we thought, my one friend thought he looked like the shooter. He had a mask and a hood and a backpack. From what my buddy told me, he saw him better than I did, actually. I think the one worker that actually thought it was him, she said between his eyes and his eyebrows, she says, when I took his order, it was like she got in her mind, oh my God, it's a guy from New York.
Talk about bad luck.
I know, right?
So what happened? Did she call the cops right away?
Well, they say she was pretty freaked out,
I bet.
but she stayed calm, took his order like everything was normal,
Okay.
and then quietly told her manager, who called the police.
Wow. She was thinking on her feet.
She was.
Are practically heroes in this story.
They are.
So they arrested him right there at the drive-thru. That's almost too perfect.
It's a crazy story, right?
It is. So they caught him. What did they find on him?
They found the 3D printed gun, the fake ID Mark Rosario,
Wow.
and a manifesto, a long document where he wrote all his complaints about the healthcare system and why he killed Brian Thompson.
So they had him evidence and all case closed, right?
Well, not so fast. This is where things get even more complicated and the public reaction takes a strange turn.
Okay. I'm listening. What happened? Did people celebrate his arrest?
Some did, of course.
Right.
But a lot of people actually started to feel sorry for Luigi.
Right.
They didn't see him as a cold-blooded killer,
Huh?
but as a victim of a broken system, someone who was pushed too far.
Wait, are you saying people were defending the guy who killed someone?
It sounds crazy, right?
It does.
But remember we talked about how many people are frustrated with healthcare.
Right.
They feel ignored, taken advantage of, like no one's listening to them.
Yeah.
And in Luigi, some people saw their own anger, their own feelings of helplessness.
I guess that makes sense in a weird way.
It does.
But still supporting someone who committed murder, that seems extreme.
It is extreme, and it caused a huge debate. But then something completely unexpected happened.
What?
A Give, Send, Go campaign was started
For what?
to raise money for Luigi's legal defense.
Okay.
And get this, they raised almost $300,000.
What?
Over 10,000 people donated.
That's crazy. How could someone who did something so horrific get that kind of support?
That's the question that has divided everyone.
Some people think his supporters are delusional that they're condoning murder.
Right.
Others say it's a symptom of a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
A sign of the anger and frustration so many people have towards the U.S. healthcare system.
It's complicated.
It really is.
There's no easy answers.
But one thing's clear. This case hit a nerve,
Yeah.
exposed raw emotions, and started a national debate about healthcare,
About justice.
about right and wrong.
This is a story for our times, for sure.
Over 10,000 people donating to his defense fund. That's wild,
It's definitely a sign that things are messed up.
right?
I mean, for a lot of people, healthcare in this country is just a constant source of stress,
Yeah,
fear, even anger.
Yeah.
They feel like the system is working against them,
totally.
that their needs are being ignored.
And Luigi tapped into that anger in a way,
Yeah.
even though he was totally wrong,
Oh, absolutely.
and did something horrific.
Yeah.
He became a symbol for some people.
Right.
It's like a twisted kind of folk hero.
Actually dangerous and disturbing. When people feel pushed to the edge like that,
Yeah.
they can fall for these extreme ideologies. They start to see violence as the answer,
Right.
a way to get back at the system they think is unfair.
But violence never solves anything.
You're right.
It just creates more pain and suffering.
Exactly.
In Luigi's case, it cost someone their life,
Yeah,
tore families apart.
right.
It didn't change the healthcare system at all.
No real change comes from that. Real change needs conversation,
Yeah.
working within the system to get to the root of the problem.
Okay, so let's talk about those root causes then.
Okay.
What's fueling this anger and frustration?
One of the biggest issues is affordability.
Yeah.
Healthcare costs here are insane compared to other developed countries.
Yeah.
So many people struggle to afford basic care,
Yep.
even with insurance.
I've heard those stories too.
Yeah.
People going bankrupt from medical bills.
It's scary.
Yeah.
No one should have to choose between their health and their finances.
Right. And then there's the access issue.
You got it. Millions of Americans are uninsured or underinsured.
Yeah.
So they have little to no access to healthcare services.
And that hits low-income communities and people of color especially hard.
Exactly.
It feels like profit comes before people.
Yeah, and that creates this breeding ground for anger and resentment.
Right, when people feel like their basic needs are ignored,
Yeah, they're more likely to lash out.
even in destructive ways.
It's a complex problem, no simple solution.
Right.
But we gotta start by admitting there are systemic issues at play.
Yeah.
We need real conversations about how to make healthcare affordable and accessible for everyone.
And find ways to deal with those social and economic inequalities.
That's a key point.
Right.
It's not just about fixing healthcare, it's about creating a fairer society.
A huge task.
It is.
But we can't ignore it.
Right.
The stakes are way too high.
Good.
We've seen what happens when anger and frustration boils over.
Yeah, the Luigi Mangione case is a prime example. It's a tragedy on so many levels. A life lost families, broken a society, dealing with the consequences of its own failures.
But it's a wake-up call, too.
Absolutely.
We can't let this happen again.
We got to come together.
Right.
And find ways to heal these wounds that are dividing us.
And that starts with listening.
Yeah.
Understanding different perspectives.
Working together.
To build a better future for everybody.
It's a big goal.
It is.
But we got to try. The alternative is just too awful to think about.
I agree. We can't afford to just sit back and do nothing.
We have to learn from this and work together to build a better future.
We've talked about the healthcare system and all its problems, but what about Luigi himself?
Yeah, where does he fit in?
Was he a victim?
Or a cold-blooded killer?
I mean, he was obviously suffering.
Both physically and mentally?
Right, he felt betrayed by the system.
Yeah, and found comfort in those dark ideologies.
And his story, it's not unique.
There are so many people out there just like him.
Struggling with pain and frustration.
Feeling abandoned.
But he chose to commit this horrible act of violence.
Like a life.
Caused so much pain to innocent people.
No matter how much he was hurting, you can't justify that.
So where do we go from here?
How do you balance justice with compassion?
Yeah, it's tough.
You can't excuse violence.
Right.
But we can't ignore the issues that lead to these tragedies either.
So we need to address the anger and frustration.
Yeah.
Create a society where people feel heard and supported.
Have access to the resources they need.
And that's bigger than just healthcare.
It's about building a more just and equal society.
A society where everyone has the opportunity to live a good life.
No matter their background.
It's a huge challenge.
It is, but we gotta try.
The alternative is just unthinkable.
We can't be complacent.
We have to learn from this.
And work together to make things better.
Well said.
It's unimaginable. I was roommates with him, unfathomable, knowing the kind, person that I saw and knew.
People you'd think would do something like this, he was one of the nicest kids.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but obviously this conversation isn't over.
Right.
The Luigi Mangione case is a story that will continue to unfold.
And we'll be here to follow it every step of the way.
Giving you in-depth analysis, expert perspectives, and thought-provoking discussions.
We want to hear from you too.
Right. What are your thoughts on this case? Is Luigi Mangione a villain or a victim?
Or maybe something in between.
Leave a comment below and let's keep talking about it.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories like this.
You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other podcast apps.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
A rich man's world.